Smokers have the best laughs.
They do.
When you cannot get oxygen in your lungs to breathe, the gagging, gasping, wheezing, that seems to bother everybody.
It's not that you're laughing hard.
Right.
It's just the
but
fact
you
that
know, if you hear people gag, and as a comic, your ears are going, they love me. So I'm a single man. I hear the on the back of the room. So I run back there, and I never forget, she walked out. She was wearing a white blouse, the short leather skirts. She had an unlit cigarette hanging from her lip. She had an 80s perm. She's looking at me. I'm looking at her. She reaches in her hair, pulls out a lighter, starts the cigarette. She looks at me with the smoke, and she goes, "What are you looking at?" And I'm going, "I think I'm looking at my future."
Hello, comedian Mickey Bell. It's that time again. Yes, it's time for another Get Over It podcast, and I am so excited that I get to talk with the Jeff Allen, a great comedic genius. But my goodness, he has got a story to tell you today, and I want to jump into it because I want you to get all that you can out of this particular episode. Jeff Allen is going to be joining me right now, so be sure to like, share, comment right now. Go ahead. You got time. I'm going to give you time. Like, share, comment, because coming up next, Jeff Allen is going to tell us how to get over it. Woo! America's Got Talent, Dry Bar Comedy. Jeff Allen in the studio with us.
We are.
How are you, sir?
I'm walking upright, and that's at my age, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
I just wake up every day and go, "Oh, okay, we got another one." So.
I got to make it through another one.
Yeah, we were watching a show last night, and the lawyer in the middle of the show in court drops of a heart attack, and I said to Tammy, "That's how I'm going, baby. I'll be on stage, and I'll just drop."
That's the way you want to go?
No, actually.
Why?
I'd like to go to sleep and not wake up.
That's the best way to go. That's the best way to go.
Be with Jesus and say, "Oh, man, I didn't even get to say goodbye."
Yeah. So take me back to your childhood. Did that kind of frame who you are today as far as what you're doing?
Well, it's interesting. I wrote a book, and in the book I talk a little bit about this. My father probably suffered from depression. He was never officially diagnosed. My brother certainly was diagnosed with bipolar, and they were very similar in ways. And he would go into his room and hole up for a couple of weeks, but when he came out, we would sit in the living room and listen to Cosby albums on the hi-fi. Remember the hi-fi?
Yeah.
You needed a team of 7 grown men to move it into your room. That was our audio system.
There was no taking it in.
It was all cabinet.
Listen.
It was all cabinet, tiny little speaker. But we listened to Cosby albums, and then not many people know this, but Woody Allen had a comedy album. My dad was a huge Woody Allen fan, and those are what I remembered. I remember him laughing, and my brother, on the other hand, had a little harder time with my father, and their relationship was stressed. Everybody's relationship with my father was stressed, but. So the comedy was part of it, and then I saw a comedian open. My brother was a musician, and he had a band, and he did a show at a club in Chicago, and a couple comedians opened for him. And I remember I was 16 or 17 sitting there going, "Gosh, that would be the coolest thing."
Yeah.
And how do you do it? I mean, it wasn't like career day. They set up a table in high school.
Comedians walk
around. Stand up. No parent wanted their kid to do this. 6 years later, I guess I was I was working for a jewelry company, and we were putting up a show, and somebody said, "Let's go to the Comedy Cottage." And I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Well, a bunch of comedians." And that was it. I went in. It was August. I think November. I worked the Courage up. Thanksgiving night. Or I drank the Courage up.
Yeah. Either way, you got on stage.
Either way, I got on stage, and that was Thursday. Sunday, I went back for another open mic night, and it was humiliating, by the way. And the MC came over to me and said, "You're going to have to make some sense tonight. We're still trying to figure out what you said Thursday night." I didn't know you wrote stuff out. I just thought you went up and talked about your day.
Yeah.
Because that's so every comic in Chicago, it looked that casual.
Yes. The good ones make it look so easy.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, it was like a couple months later, I saw some guy writing in a notebook. I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, I'm preparing my set." I go, "You prepare this stuff?" And he goes, "You don't?" And I said, "No, I just thought you went up and talked about it." He goes, "Boy, that explains a lot." Watching you for a couple months, and you're really just all. And the first story I ever told that got a huge laugh. I had a VW Bug that was always breaking down. I had to park it on a hill because I couldn't afford to replace the starter on it.
Oh.
So I had to run it down the hill, pop the clutch, and get going. And a few young people at Clutch, look it up. It's on Google. So anyway, one night I couldn't get it started. I had to run the last 2 miles to make my 5-minute set. And I run in the door, dripping sweat, and I hit the stage, and I just started screaming about what a piece of garbage this Volkswagen Bug was. I said I've owned 3 because I couldn't believe how bad the first 2 were, but they're that bad. If you're lucky enough to get a heater going, it'll burn every hair off your ankle. I said the defroster's your breath on a rag.
That is so good.
Yeah. And anyway, all of a sudden I realized there's people laughing. Mm-hmm. So I learned real quick that comedy was truth, and it was angst, and it was there was an edge to it with. So I've been a cranky old man even since I was 22. I just grew into my personality.
So is this a bit, or is this the real you?
This is me.
This is you.
A curmudgeon, I think was the word one of the reviewers used on me.
So we're talking like 400 million views, right? YouTube, social media. Of course, you were there before social media, and then you saw social media come in. It changed the game.
Changed my life. I likened what happened on Dry Bar to what if you were a comedian in the 70s or 80s and Johnny Carson tapped you on the shoulder after your first one and said, "We'd like, come on, sit down and talk to me." I'll tell you what happened. October the previous year, I was on a tour with Brad Upton and a couple other guys, and Upton tells me he's had over 100 million. And I go, what is Dry Bar? Mm-hmm. And not a week later, my manager called me and said, "I got you booked on this thing called Dry Bar." And we were trying to pitch Netflix. So I had material, new stuff. I didn't want to burn it on this Dry Bar.
Yeah.
He goes, "No, you can do whatever you want. Just do your old happy wife, happy life. Do whatever you want." I said, "I can do old material." He goes, "Oh, yeah, they don't care."
Wow.
So I said, "I'm in." And January, we shot it. And I hired a social media guy November the previous year that I couldn't afford. But I said to my wife, "We'll spend the money. We'll get this released. And if it hits like Brad's did, then we got everything in place and we can run with it. If it doesn't hit, then I'll fire the guy and go back to posting my own garbage on Facebook." Yeah. And to put it in perspective, I hired the guy in October, and I had maybe 1,000 followers on Facebook, and a big video for me was maybe 1,000 views. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was huge. Within 3 weeks of hiring a social media guy, he calls me. He goes, "We got your first viral. You're at 600,000 views."
Oh, my
and I
goodness.
go, "Who's watching this stuff?"
Yeah.
He says, "Well, if you know how to manipulate the algorithms or whatever." I mean, that's his job. He was 28 years old. I mean, to me, it was like, who cares what I eat?
Exactly.
I mean, to this day, I won't take a picture of my food just because I don't care what I eat.
Right.
And I don't want my wife seeing it going.
Exactly. I'm telling on myself.
I told you to stay off the cinnamon rolls. You're going to drop dead. So anyway, January hits, and again, I can't afford this guy. And I said to him after taping, I said, "When are you going to release this?" And they said, "Probably August." I go, "I can't pay 8 more months." Yeah, I can't pay 8 more months. Anyway, I call my financial guy. I look at my calendar. I have nothing.
Wow.
And this is, when you look at God's plans for us, my calendar was empty from June to August. I mean, normally it's slow. And in the church market, it's slow. But I always have 4 or 5. It keeps me alive. Anyway, I call my financial guy and said, "I'm going to probably have to pull money out in May to get through the summer." He says, "All right, well, just let me know." And they call us by the end of February, said, "We really like this. We're going to release it in March."
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, so that was a relief. That was an answer to a prayer. Right. I would say by the middle of May, we were turning work down.
Gosh.
It hit. My wife was looking at the numbers. She's going 20 million, 40 million, 60 million. So who's watching this stuff? But it's, and I tell my audiences every week, I said, you can help me out by sharing whatever it is you see of mine that you like. Mm-hmm. That helps. And that's the beauty of the internet now is you don't have to worry about L.A. or New York's gatekeepers.
Right.
When I started in 1978, there were 4 or 5 people that determined what America saw in stand-up comedy, and you had to live on either coast. And I got a sitcom pilot in 2000, living in Nashville, because of basically social media was just really kind of breaking. But we were able to do my auditions. I'd fly into L.A. for the last couple I had to do live in front of the thing. But we sent them DVDs that I did, and then they looked at it and said, "We can build something around this." Mm. And the pilot didn't get picked up. But I realized living in Nashville, I don't have to be in L.A. or New York. I didn't have to raise my family in L.A. or New York. And it may have stifled things earlier, but once the internet hit, I mean, you don't really need L.A. or New York now. And we just did a pilot script for the book I wrote. Are we there yet? And we're going to fund the pilot ourselves. We're going to shoot it here in Nashville, and we're going to own it.
That is so cool.
Yeah, that's what I call. When I realized the first pilot, after we got done shooting, I called my manager. I said, I think we just got played. I really did. I had all these ideas to put in it, and they'd pat my hand and go, "That's a great idea, Jeff. I need to make a note." And none of it got in the script. None of it. And I looked at the script when we shot it. Tammy and I went to New York to celebrate. I mean, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
Getting a pilot,
Absolutely.
Castle Rock. You know?
Absolutely.
And buddy Mark Lowry said to me, he goes, "You really want that?" And I go, "What are you talking about?" And Mark said something really profound. He goes, "I'm as famous as I want to be." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I can go into this Christian world and people know me. And believe me, we all like our ego stroked and pats on the back and told how wonderful we are." But he said, "Then I can leave this world and nobody knows who I am. So I can eat and be, and not be scrutinized as I go through life." And I said, I never thought about it. And in hindsight, we're glad it didn't get picked up. Our marriage was just getting back on track in 2000. We just moved here. Everything was kind of our new faith, basically a new beginning as a husband and wife. Mm-hmm. So thinking about what it entails, 3 weeks in L.A., and then I'd probably hit the road the fourth week just to put more money.
Right.
And I don't know if our marriage would have survived it. Now, she comes out when she wants to with me. And, I shot a movie a couple of years ago. In the middle of that, we got into an argument on the phone. I had been gone a lot, and then it was 2 weeks on location. And in the middle of that, we're arguing on the phone. I go, "What is going on with you?" She goes, "Don't hate me for missing you." And I went, "Holy cow, that's a country lyric."
What?
I said, "We live in Nashville. Somebody can take that and run with it." Isn't that a great lyric?
That is good.
Yeah, "Don't hate me for missing you."
That is crazy.
And so anyway, I flew her out. We spent a couple of days together. I called my manager and I said, "I told you when we started all this that she would determine when we're done."
Yeah.
And I said, "We're done booking for the year." And he goes, "I'm way ahead of you. I stopped a month ago." Yeah, all because of Drive By, really. And the
that is crazy.
Yeah.
And of course, that's going to affect your attendance at your shows.
Well, I stopped working clubs. I did clubs for the first 16, 17 years of my career. That was what I did. And then I was in 9/11. I was in Vegas working the Tropicana, and I couldn't get home. My wife, like all of America, wife was freaking. Tammy was freaking out. The kids were still at home, and what's going on in the world? And the guy makes me work that night. I said, "Only in Vegas would they put you on stage that night." And then he says, "Don't mention it." Vegas, the TVs aren't on a lot. I guarantee you there were probably tens of thousands of people living there or vacationing there.
They
had no idea that those towers were. Tammy woke me up and said, "Turn on the TV. This is bad." And I saw the second plane hit the tower, and I go, "Is that a movie? What is that?" Yeah. She said, "No, it's not. That's a second." She goes, "Oh, my God, a second plane." Wow. And I went home and told my Jewish manager, I said, I got to find another place to work. You think churches would hire me? He goes, "You're asking me?" I go, "Well, we worship a Jew. I thought maybe you would have some insight to
You don't
this."
have any pull with this?
You don't have any pull. So I put it out. I think I hired an agent here and put it out that I'm willing. I'm willing to step down and do churches. I got one church in the entire year to hire me. And when your resume is all casinos and nightclubs, pastors apparently are a little hesitant.
They are.
To give you the pulpit, give you a pulpit for an hour. No, I'll be clean. Yeah, well.
We've heard that before.
So it was the Gaither when I started with the Gaithers. I didn't even know who he was. Bob McKenzie saw me. I did a show for Gary Chapman at Sam's Place at the Ryman. I was good friends with Chaz, still am, with Chaz Corzine. And Chaz says, "Hey, you want to go up and do 5 minutes?" And everything I'm doing in the church was connected to that 5 minutes. If you want to know how God works.
Wow.
I did a 5-minute set. I walk off. Tammy's crying because, again, we were at new beginnings. And to thinking of the history of the Ryman and who had hit that stage and to be able to work in front of all those people, we were so grateful and so humbled by it. And then somebody calls me, says, "I got your number from Chaz. We're doing a show for the Christ Presbyterian Choir at the Belmont Mansion in the living room." Not a comic's favorite.
Exactly.
A venue.
Well, that and outdoors.
Oh my God, yeah. I got one of those for you. So anyway, some woman's after the show is just yakking, and I'm shocked anybody wants to talk to me, So anyway, I'm listening. My wife is standing there. And then she leaves, and then Bob steps up, and I go, "You're not married to her?" He goes, "Oh, gosh, no." I go, "Man, you're the most patient man." I said, I feel it's my job to stand and listen to people. You didn't. Anyway, he goes, I work with a guy named Bill Gaither. And I go, who's that? He goes, you never heard of Bill Gaither? I go, no, I have not. He goes, this is going to be better than I thought. Yeah. He said, we do a little gathering in Indianapolis called the Praise Gathering. And I guarantee, he said, I'll give him your name. So I had lunch with Bill a couple of weeks later, and I said, I'm not familiar with you. He goes, you never heard of me? I go, no, I have not. He goes, this is good. This is good. And anyway, that little gathering had about 15,000 people there. And that stamp of approval. I was just in Michigan recently doing something, and I said, Michigan kept me alive for a year. I got 3 or 4 wooden shoes from Holland, from churches I worked. Apparently they were a big Gaither group, but that his saying, Jeff is okay, just putting his arm around me and it's the first time I ever did testimony. I did the Thursday night show. And one of his people come to me the next day, and they say, on the breakout today, could you mention you love your wife? And I go, they don't know that? He goes, well, you hit her kind of hard. I go, I did? I mean, you have no idea.
Yeah.
You really don't. So I said, sure, I can do that. So anyway, I do my set, 15, 20 minutes. Anyway, I'm walking off, and I remember, I forgot to tell everybody I love Tammy. So I walk back.
I forgot to tell the people that I love my wife.
So I walk back and I start talking about how blessed I've been and how close we came to losing we were 10 minutes from filing divorce papers and all this. And anyway, I start crying, pretty heavy. I could barely get through it. And I walk off and Tammy's standing there. She goes, my gosh, what the heck was that? So from then on, she called it swagger. She goes, did you go Jimmy Swagger?
Oh.
Full swagger. And I had no clue how I would, that reaction to it, but that kind of set up what I did for the next number of years was outreach. I had a story to tell.
You've been very open about that. You just mentioned it. You were about 10 minutes away. What led you down that path?
Just anger, bitterness, jaded, cynical. The book is entitled My Journey from a Messed Up to a Meaningful Life. It was really a search for meaning. When I look back on it, it was 2 years into my faith where I heard the word nihilist, and I looked at Tammy and I go, gosh, that was me. I mean, she would shake me. We were losing the house, everything, and I didn't care. I mean, I tell churches all the time, I tell the world all the time, if you're in a marriage that's full of acrimony, wait to get to apathy. Mm-hmm. Apathy is the most painful human, I don't even know if it's an emotion. It's just a state of mind. And I couldn't find a reason to care about anything.
Wow.
And it's an odd place to be. I tell a story in the book. It's funny when you hear it, but it was serious at the time. I got focused on my kid's gerbil. I was watching him one morning for about 20 minutes, just sitting there. And she comes in and goes, what's with you and the gerbil? I go, look at it. She goes, so what? It's a gerbil. I said, yeah, but it gets sticks. One side of the crate and moves them over to the other side and then stacks them up and then moves them back. And that's what he does. He just moves sticks and then spins a wheel every now and then for the entertainment. She goes, so what? I go, man, I'm kind of projecting our life, and that's it. I buy some things, they wear out, and we take them to the landfill. I buy more things, we wear out, we take them to the landfill. Those are sticks. I said, if I'm lucky, I get a sitcom or movie deal. We make a lot of money, and we get nicer sticks, but they all wind up in the landfill. And then every now and then we go to Vegas, or you and I go to Vegas, or the kids take to Disney World. That's our wheel. We spin. Basically, we're living lives of gerbils. And she looks at me, she goes, you've lost your mind. I go, you don't see that? And I look at her and I go, I sit here and I project 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. And I said, if that's my life, I'm checking out. And she looked at me and said, you checked out years ago, pal. You're not even here now. I'm talking to you. Your mind is somewhere else. And she was right. And I realized after becoming a believer, the devil wants us in the past. If he can't destroy you with your past, when you finally accept your past and accept it for what it was and move on from it, then he loses that hook on you. Now he'll project you into the future, how boring your life is going to be for the next 15 or 20 years. This is it, pal. This is what you do. You get up, you trudge to work, you finish, you come home, you kiss your wife on the cheek, eat a meal, you sit down, you watch some TV. This is it. This is all you're going to do with your life. God wants you here in the moment. He wants you living in the moment, man, with that woman. He wants you to see, he wants you to remember the beauty you remember at that time. I do this on stage in the clubs now. I talk about the first time I laid eyes on my wife. I fell in love with her laugh. In a club you can't see because of the lights,
right.
And I heard this beautiful, she was a smoker, 38. Smokers have the best laughs.
They do.
I mean, when you cannot get oxygen in your lungs to breathe, the gagging, gasping, wheezing that seems to bother everybody.
It's not that you're laughing hard.
Right.
It's just the
but
fact
you
that
know, if you hear people gagging, as a comic, your ears are going, they love me.
I'm on.
They love me. So I'm a single man. I hear that on the back of the room. So I run back there, and I never forget, she walked out. She was wearing a white blouse, a short leather skirt. And I say this, she had a unlit cigarette hanging from her lip. She had an 80s perm. It was a huge perm. She's looking at me. I'm looking at her. She reaches in her hair, pulls out a lighter, starts the cigarette. Yeah.
In her hair?
Yeah, no, she lights the cigarette. Yeah, but anyway, she looks at me with the smoke, and she goes, "What are you looking at?" And I'm going, "I think I'm looking at my future." And this is going to be a ride, and it has been. But I tell men all the time, you got to remember that moment, because something leapt in your heart enough with her and with the ladies, with him, something there, and you can't forget that. And the devil wants you to forget that. God wants you to remember those moments. And I call them divine sparks. He just hits your heart every now and then. She'll walk into the room occasionally, and I'll look at her and just at her beauty. I'll see it. I'll see it, because that's my prayer in the morning. Let me see her as you see her. Let me see her the way I saw her. Because it is rote, and it is familiarity breeds contempt. All of it, man. If you don't take the time to remember. And that's God's charge to the Israelis, the Israelites. Remember, I brought you out of the wilderness. Remember, you tend to forget. We have short memories on those moments. So I call them sparks. God will, just flint to your heart. Look at it, remember. And then you'll remember, white blouse, short leather skirt, perm. And you go,
half-lit cigarette.
And you go, and then, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And you change the channel, The trajectory for our lives has certainly not been a straight trajectory. It's been peaks and valleys, and grace and forgiveness. When I read about and heard about, it was the Ecclesiastes was the verse that got me. I mean, I had a friend sign me up for Bible tapes, and I never opened them. And anyway, she takes the kids that summer, and we were really she was in the middle of seeing another guy, and it was an awful time in our lives. But those are the times that God breaks through, and you make a decision, And she took the kids, and I look at those tapes, and I opened one up, and it was first tape out of a year. I mean, over a year collecting them, just stacks of manila. And out of all those tapes, the first verse I heard was meaningless, meaningless, all in life is meaningless. And I went, yes. That was my conclusions after 7 or 8 years of 12-step programs and self-help and Buddhism and Ayn Rand. I was reading Ayn Rand, humanism, anything to find some connection and to spark me into caring about something. And when I heard that truth, I said, if that's truth is in the Bible, then there must be other truths in this book. And I dove into that book for about 3 months. She was gone with the kids. I had no other distractions. I had very little work. I was still working clubs, but just blew me away, And then Genesis 1:1, which I found out later, Francis Schaeffer said it's the most pregnant verse in the Bible. It gives birth to everything in the Bible. In the beginning, God. And that's when I called my friend up, and I said, there is a God. And I was sobbing. I mean, I was scared to death. Talk about fear God. He goes, what, you got a problem with? I go, yeah, blasphemy, cursing, denying him, And he says, have you gotten to the verses about the cross? And I go, I don't know what you're talking about.
Wow.
And he goes, I was stuck in the Old Testament. Yeah. Job and Ecclesiastes were my two. That gives you an idea where my head and heart was at.
Wow.
I found Job exhilarating. It was like, holy cow, I get it.
Yeah.
I was with the guys that said, curse God and die. I mean, Lord. But to pull back the curtain in the way I saw it, and this is what some pastor told me, he goes, your theology's whacked. I go, yeah, I get it. But the way I saw it was God sitting with Satan going, and Satan going, give it up, man. Mm-hmm. That whole experiment down there ain't working out. That creation thing with these people, these human beings, they're mine. I own them. And God said, I'll give you all of that. You can do to Job whatever you want. That's all, but you can't take his life.
Wow.
And he'll still. And God knew Job's heart well enough to know that despite his wife saying to him, are you still with him? Curse him and die. Just die. Covered in all the sores and, and to this day, that just moves me, that God knew his one. He said, I got one.
Yeah. That he trusted him enough.
Enough.
Yeah.
And then to tell the author of lies. So he sends in 3 of his disciples to lie to Job, then tell him, you must have done something.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of your sin that this is happening. And no, we live in a fallen world, and Satan does have his way here.
Yeah.
He does get to move through it, but we have a counter to that. Everything that Jesus came to show us was, I am the truth. You get with me, you don't have to believe the lies. Doesn't mean I don't believe them occasionally, and I don't get beat down by those. But then I have to ask myself, what is your source of information? Who is this coming from? Mm-hmm. Would Jesus tell me that I'm a loser? Would Jesus tell me that I'm a lowlife? Would Jesus pound me continuously over whatever sin I recently committed? Or would Jesus say, try to do better next time, man?
That's what I try to tell people who are battling any type of mental illness. It starts with a thought. And if you will just take that thought that you had and go, okay, is this a lie or is this the truth? Right. When you say things like, nobody loves me, well, it's a lie. I mean, you can find at least one person, and so that's powerful in how you put that. And how I'm amazed at the story that you went from one successful moment to the next and you still found yourself empty to where you were searching. And that's a lot of people today.
Yeah, why does it matter? That's a huge question, and it does. I wrote the book for millennials because the publishers always ask, who are you writing the book for? And I said, I'm not writing it for Christians. The arc of the story is I wouldn't be where I am today without their relationship with Christ. That's the last half of the book. The first 6 chapters are what those 7 or 8 years of marriage look like.
Yeah.
Which the book begins when I proposed to her at baggage claim airport. I did. I was an impulse.
You romantic.
I know.
You romantic.
Well, that's why I put it first. I wanted a female reader to fall in love with my romantic side. I could see women.
Why were you having trouble with your marriage?
When I opened my show with how I proposed to her, and I could see you ladies elbowing your husband. Why didn't you think of that? Why didn't you think of that? So anyway, and then the first chapter ends 7 years later. I find out she's in California with another man, and no cell phones. So she had taken. She wanted to go visit a friend in Southern Cal, so she goes there, and I call her up a couple days later. I needed to talk to her about something, and her friend says she's at the mall shopping. Well, it was one of many red flags. I said nobody visits a friend and then goes off and shops on their own. Yeah. So anyway, I called my credit card company and asked them, is my card being used at a mall in Southern Cal? They said no, but it is at a hotel in Southern Cal. Wow. So I got the number of the hotel. I called it. She picked up the phone. And I said, gotcha, and I'm not doing this over the phone. Get home now. 2 hours later, her friend called me and said, Tammy will not be home tonight. She's too devastated to be in public. She's just sobbing in the room. We got her an 8 a.m. flight the next morning. Mm. Mickey, I believe this in my heart. If she come home that night, we would not be married today. James compares the tongue to a rudder on a ship, large vessel, small piece. And our tongue is a small part of our bodies, but we literally steer our lives with this tongue. Mm-hmm. We can bless, edify, and build up, or we can cut, curse, and tear down. I would have cut her that night. I would have cut deep. I was angry, and I was an angry man to begin with, but I was righteously angry over this. And the names I would have called her, we would have never. But I had a night alone with what I now recognize as the Holy Spirit. I believe that in my heart of hearts. God was there that night to remind me of what she endured for the last 7 or 8 years being married to me, and it wasn't pretty. And I wrote about them. It's a couple of them in the book. One of them, I stood on a stool in New Jersey in the middle of an argument. I climbed on a stool and I screamed at her till she fell down onto her knees and sobbed in the kitchen. Put my 6-year-old to bed that night. He says, Daddy, you win. I go, what do you mean I win? He goes, you yell, Mommy cries. Not a proud moment. I went down and I did tell Tammy I'm going to get help. I don't want to be this way. I really don't. I didn't, And I spent 6 or 7 years trying to better get rid of that rage, get rid of that. But eventually I'd smash things, break things, scream and holler, and didn't know why. But that at the end of all of that, the end of that night, I went from how could she, I was righteously wronged to, oh my gosh, I wouldn't want to be married to me either.
Goodness.
Yeah. So anyway, I picked her up at the airport the next morning and she's walking towards me And it's amazing how our life has changed at baggage claim.
Rekindled at baggage claim.
Rekindled. So anyway, I saw her face is swollen from all the tears, and she braces herself, and I walk over and I kissed her on the cheek, and she said, "That's it." I go, "We're a mess. You and I are an absolute mess." I said, "If what you want is in California, you can have them. I'm not going to stand in your way. But if you want our marriage to work, you have to own 50% of it, 50-50. Gets 51-49, that imbalance will kill us. We'll start blaming, we'll start name-calling, we'll start resenting. All of that stuff will not move this marriage forward. You own your half, I own my half if we're meant to be together." And it wasn't pretty. The next almost 7 months, 6-7 months, was an absolute hell. I left her alone, she left me alone, and we finally, at one night, I'll never forget this. I was sleeping in the guest room, and she had brought home, she has a habit of doing this. She brings home these wounded women. She used to rescue dogs. She brings home some woman, showed up at an event she was at with a black eye, and Tammy says, "You're not going home to him." She made up something, I fell down or whatever. She goes, "You're not going home to him. You can come live with us." And I said to her, "Where's she going to sleep?" Because I was in the guest room. So Tammy says, "You can come back in our room." And one night I remember touching her. She had her back to me. And I realized she always had her back to me in the bed. Then I tapped her on the shoulder and tried to pull her to turn around. She goes, "I can't. I don't want to look at you." And I said, "Holy cow. We're at a point now where we can't even look at each other." Knowing the marriage was probably over gave us permission to just talk openly and honestly without worry.
Because you're at that point of what do I have to lose?
That's it.
Yeah.
And when she would tell me exactly how she felt for all those years, when I would roll my eyes I wasn't even aware of it.
Yeah.
She'd say things and I'd just roll my eyes. She goes, "You dismiss me as I'm an ignorant piece of trash." And I go, "Really?" It was never my intent.
Right.
I don't know. Again, it was such a habitual. I used to catch myself with people on the road.
Yeah.
That simple. I do a bit on it now where I say my wife is at a point now where she doesn't want to say things to me that she knows will upset me, so she just sighs at me, and then I can't call her on anything. I'll walk in her. I said, every man in this room knows what it is. You walk in her room, she looks at you and she goes, and then you say, "What was that?" And she goes, "What was what?" "That, what you just said." Yeah. She goes, "I didn't say anything." And then I realize what I have to ask is, "What were you thinking about?"
Right.
And then she goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "Well, before you looked at me with such disdain, you had a thought. I want to know the thought." And then she goes, "You really want to know?" And I go, "Yeah." And then she says, "You want the truth?" I go, "No, gaslight me like CNN. No, tell me the truth." And it's something so like those pants. I'm tired of looking at those pants, And I go, "You bought me these for Christmas." And she'd say, "Yeah, but I made a mistake. On the mannequin, they look good. On you, they look like clown pants." And we go round and round and round, and but it's the sigh and the eye rolls and the tick, and I guarantee you, there's thousands of women out there that know what it is, and there's thousands of men that know what it is, and it is a dismissal of you're irrelevant, what you think is irrelevant. So I had to become aware of everything. And so that put me into a place where I was constantly in my head thinking about what I'm going to say, how I react, and why am I reacting the way I'm reacting. And, eventually we filled out divorce papers and got on our way to the courthouse. And 10 minutes from there, we were ready to file. And she said, "Let's go home." And I said, "You're out." She goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "I've done an honest soul searching, babe. You're out. You deserve better than me. I'm trying, but I think I'm tainted goods. My brother was like this. My father was. I could look down the line of the males in our family, from cousins and everything. We were all drunks and drug addicts. Some were still active. Some were in recovery. But we were angry, bitter, jaded, cynical people, And I said, maybe this is my plight in life. I don't know. And the last half of the book is what happens when you give your life to Jesus. Wow. You just say, "I'm yours, man." I got on my knees in Dallas, Texas, after listening to about 1.5 years worth of Bible tapes in 3 months. And a lot of those were like 2, 3 to 4 different times. I was all day, every day, steeped in the Bible, going, "Holy cow, holy cow, holy cow. My gosh, this truth is." I remember a verse where Paul said, "What joy do you receive now from those things that you are now ashamed of? And I'm paraphrasing, but that was like, in other words, all those parties that I went to that I thought I was experiencing joy and pleasure and fun. So what pleasure do you get from those now, looking back on them? Again, nothing. I carry nothing but shame for the man I was, And I wrote a poem, "Who I was is not who I am. Today I choose to walk a different path, so feel free to throw me the stones of my past. I will not deny them. I will gladly receive them and use them to humble me. For today the shield is the Lord. Because of who he was and the blood that he shed, I no longer have to run from my past. I embrace it. I embrace my past. I never want to forget that, ever.
Yeah.
Because that's what God brought me out of. Again, God says to the Israelites, don't forget, even though you were wandering for 40 years, I brought you out of there. I showed you a whole new life.
Goodness.
And we got to remember, and the Jews, that's what Passover is. That's what all these particular reminders are for the Jewish people. There was a time when we were in therapy, and I know we're running long, and it's probably what you didn't want to talk about, but we were in counseling briefly. We couldn't sit in the same room. They sent me in the hall. They go, Jeff, you have to go to the hall. Why me? She should go to the hall. I want to sit here. I want to talk. I got things to say. So anyway, I'll never forget this. Tammy was sitting there, and the therapist said to her, what do you want out of this? Through tears, Tammy said, I want him to be the way he was when we first met. And the counselor laughed. She said, I don't mean to laugh, but he'll never be the way it was. And I read later in Scott Peck's book, Road Less Traveled, true love cannot exist in a relationship till conflict enters the relationship. There's no such thing as a loving relationship without conflict. Mm-hmm. So how you resolve those conflicts will determine how deep your love will get. And his example was, it always enters simply, like I want Chinese food, I want Mexican food. Now you got conflict. Now you can resolve that and then begin to move. But all that euphoric feeling and all that stuff that everybody seems to think is real love, he said, is an illusion put there by God to keep the species going. Solomon calls it the art of attraction. I mean, in the Song of Songs, if you don't have the art of attraction, if you don't have that euphoria, that, that moment when, perm, white blouse, then there's no attraction, therefore you don't have a chance. But it's when conflict enters, now you're entering into a phase of genuine love. Mm-hmm. So that made sense to me, because we didn't resolve conflicts well. We really didn't. They got ugly and they got cheap and petty, mm-hmm. And because prior to Tammy, every relationship I had, when conflict entered, I fled. That was the end of the relationship. People would ask, what happened to so-and-so? She wasn't worth the hassle. Mm-hmm. That's how I justified it. Yeah. In essence, conflict resolution in my home growing up was simple. My dad was the law. And if you challenged the law, you got pitched against the wall. That ended the conflict. Mm-hmm. So I just learned to flee conflict. Wow. My brother broke my nose twice in the middle of conflicts. So I would trigger fight or flight with me. And Tammy, I said, God gave me a woman who apparently loves conflict, because I would go to another room mm-hmm. and say, give me time to settle down, because now my brain is, and she's following me. And she's like, why do you have to go in another room? Yeah. Because just give me a second. Just let me, so then I'd punch a wall or whatever, to try to get distance from it was a dance that we did for years. And when you finally realize that the people who love you, truly love you, when you conflict with them, are not leaving. They're not abandoning you. They're not going to flee from you, but they're going to be there. Then you can sit and conflict like adults. It's not about anything other than what it is about. Yeah. But when you got all these computers inside you that trip fight or flight, then it becomes about all this other stuff. So
for the viewer that's watching, was it worth it?
Absolutely, 100%, man. I did not realize. I think of that 10 minutes all the time. If we file those papers, I lose 30 years with a woman I never knew I could love. And I'm still trying to learn. That's my prayer every morning. I got a book of 18 prayers. It's called The First Hour. Mark Koch wrote it. It's 18 prayers that a man does in the morning. Starts with God, then it goes to family, and then goes to career. And then you pray for your family, you pray for your career, you pray with God mm-hmm. to open your eyes, open your heart, and then there's a spot in there where you add your daily prayers. My daily prayer is, let me see her as I saw her. That's the line from the therapy. I want, and then with Jesus, I found myself 4 or 5 years in. I saw your book. I'm going to get it. I Am David. But I found myself 4 or 5 years into things that were unbecoming of what I thought I should be as a man and as a Christian, as a husband. And I thought about just abandoning my faith.
Yeah.
And I remember being on my knees crying one day after sinning, saying, I want it to be the way it was when I first met you. I remember that. It was fresh enough to remember that honeymoon period that Jesus, I think, gives all new believers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're just this lightness of being, and and then real life comes. Then the conflict enters.
Yeah.
Jesus says, no, you're not going to get around it. You're going to have trials. You're going to have tribulations. Paul called them thorns. You're going to have those things in your life. But I want you to lean on me. But I want you to remember, that when you lean on me, that peace will come.
Yeah.
And, we'll get through this. And I just wanted to abandon it because I could not stop doing things that were unbecoming of what I thought I should be perfect. And a friend of mine said, holy cow, you were never raised in a church, and look at you, you're a legalist already. And I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, my God, you got how many rules now have you added to your faith? That you have to be perfect, you have to be this, you have to be that, you have to be, And I go, I never looked at it that way. He goes, my grace is sufficient for you. That's it. Don't complicate it. My grace. Do better next time. Ravi Zacharias used to talk about a poem first grader wrote, and it was all smart up and everything. And anyway, the teacher wrote on the paper, just do better next time, my child. That's all. This isn't you. These mistakes are not you. They are just do better. That's all. Get up, and do better.
That is so good.
And get over it.
Get over it. There you go.
Get over yourself.
I love how you did that.
Yeah.
So, happy wife, happy life. How did that come about?
Laying in bed one day. I think Tammy came up with it. I think we were just laying in bed, and I think she said, happy wife, happy life. I go, that's like, don't hate me for missing you.
Right.
It just came out. I started doing it on stage, and it would get huge applause and stuff. I go, well, maybe nobody's ever heard it. And then I heard Lowry say something about if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. But anyway, I ran with it, and then I trademarked it, and then I sued the lady from Jersey Housewives, and not because she was using it, because she was claiming it.
Oh, gotcha.
And her friends were going, and her followers were going, oh, you should sell. So she started selling product, and that was what I wanted to do with it.
Right.
I wanted to sell it to Cracker Barrel and get a licensing fee. That was my dream.
Yeah.
Lebanon, not that far from here.
Yeah.
They didn't want anything to do with it. So anyway, I sued them. I got $25,000, and my legal fees were $28,000. So I told Tam, we'll go broke defending this thing. So I just said, that's it. I'm done. I dropped the trademark, copyright, whatever it was.
Yeah. Man, I just love your stuff, though. I love what you do. Love the story. It's very encouraging. And I think it's just going to help a lot of people. And whenever your life is done and people walk by and they say goodbye to Jeff Allen, what do you want them to say about you?
Thanks for the laughs. Yeah, thanks for the laughs. I know what I am. I'm a distraction. I tell the crowd all the time, this is my new promo. We're doing a show at the Fisher Center October 11th with Stephen Bergazzi. It's going to be just a phenomenal family night. We're going. It's better than Cirque du Soleil. We got more laughs than they do. Sure, they're talented acrobats, but we're good comics. And I said, laughter doeth good like a medicine. I hear that all the time. You've heard it 1,000 times. But I said, have you ever really looked into it? I said, has to be by design. There's so many healing benefits to laughter, and the biggest one is it releases endorphins. Endorphins are the body's natural painkiller. They call it the body's natural morphine. So I tell audiences, my goal is to get you stoned out of your mind legally. So when you're driving home and the police pull you over and they go, you were weaving. Well, I was just at a Jeff Allen show, and I laughed myself loopy. That's my goal, man. So that's what I want them to just go, hey, man, thanks. Thanks for distracting me. I get it all the time. You get it all the time. I just had a rough time. My mom passed. At my age, it's rare that I go to a show where someone doesn't come to me and say, I just buried my husband, buried my father, whatever. And first time I've laughed in a month. First time.
That's what I was about to say. Those moments where they say, I've not had a reason to laugh.
Right.
And you got me tonight.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, that was it.
Yeah. Gaither told me, man, he said, and I know we're running long, but he said a third of my audience will laugh at whatever you do. They're there to have a good time. There's another third that may not understand everything you're talking about, but again, they're there to have a good time.
Yeah.
Now, there's a third of my people who have never been given permission to laugh. These are Christians who have been told this life on earth is something you endure until you get to heaven, and that's where the joy begins. He says, you make them laugh, we'll have a long relationship. And I toured with him for 7 years. But he said to me, I said, really, there's people, he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, they just, we'll endure this, and then we get to be with Jesus, and then we're going to experience. And Jesus says, no, man, no. Yeah, your trials, your tribulations, and that's what I got out of Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
People talk about being a cynical book. I go, no, I got it pretty right. Life without God will have no meaning. Without meaning, there's no purpose. Without purpose, suicide. So find your meaning, find your purpose through God, something that never changes. It's not your job. Your job changes. If that's your meaning in life, you're gonna be a victim of circumstances your entire life. So find your meaning in God, and He will guide your steps and put your purpose. And in the meantime, if the world isn't caving in on you, and have some Rocky Road, drink a Dr. Pepper, go see the kids play Little League.
Yeah.
That's where the joy comes.
Right.
And then in the moment, you look at your wife and you go, my God, I forgot how much I loved you. I really did forget how grateful I am that you stuck with me. I mean, are you kidding me?
That is so good.
What a gift.
My goodness. Jeff Allen, thank you so much for coming. Give me the name of the book again, because people are wondering this book you kept talking about.
Are We There Yet? You can get it on Amazon. And the audio, they wanted a professional to read my book, and I said, if anybody but me reads it, I'm not selling it.
Yeah.
So I read it and got emotional. Got a little verklempt a couple times.
There's feeling behind it.
Yeah, and I thought they'd edit them out, but they kept them in. And then there was a couple of contextual things that I in the audio that's not in the written word.
Oh, so, you got to get it. Yeah. Jeff Allen, thank you so much.
Thank you,
I
Mickey.
appreciate you.
Bless you.